So, as I start off thinking about all the college fun, sometimes it looks a little bit like this. I think when families first come into the college space of applying to college and thinking about college, and I really hope that it's the difficult thing sometimes is escaping all of the stories and things that are around what we're going to be doing. And no matter anytime you open up the New York Times or you turn on the television, there's going to be some article about college. And what I know over the years of having done this for quite some time is that it's a dynamic process. It's always changing. And that's what kind of makes it fun and interesting. My job is to also help you as parents, as students, to make sure we can quiet the noise and to give you the information that you need and to be a resource for you as we walk through all of this. So when it starts to feel like this, that's when you need to call Mrs. Devine and be like, I'm feeling like I don't know what's happening right now. And then you can know that I've got you and we're going to make sense of what's going on. And we'll do that in a number of ways. So I want to kind of map out for you what this next year-ish is going to look like so that you kind of understand the foundation that's being built to support your student if you're a parent, and to support parents along the way too, because you have a lot of questions, not surprising. So the first thing I want you to know is that in the junior year, starting in January, is when we will start our individual meetings. And that will be time for us to spend together talking about the list of colleges. I will help you put that list of colleges together. That's my job. You don't have to do that on your own. We will also look at all the curriculum planning for senior year. We'll talk about what classes might be beneficial as we start to think about building that foundation for our freshman year of college. And we'll talk about things for the summer. We'll talk about testing and whether or not we're going to take tests and what kind of strategy we want around testing. We'll look at the different timelines of early applications and regular applications and all those exciting things. And then just so you know, too, it's not as though you get one meeting and then it's like, I'm here. It's my job to help you. So as you have questions, you can schedule time and then we will be able to sit down and either in person or on Zoom and get your questions answered and make sure that you feel supported. We also have college class that goes on during our seminar period, and that will start. We actually had two kind of sort of small classes in the last couple of weeks, and then that will kind of take full force starting in January, and we'll go all the way through May. And during that time, it's during the student seminar period, so it's built into their schedule, and it's every week or every other week that we'll have time together. And during that, we'll really be talking about the college search, and we'll talk about kind of demystifying the terms around this process. We'll talk about different timelines, interviews, all the different applications, financial aid, all of those things. So as a parent, you can ask your student, hey, so what did you do in college counseling class this week? And if they say, oh, nothing, you can say, that's not true. I know there's a whole curriculum that's going on. So, they are going to be getting a lot of information that I know that, you will, I'm sure, share with them and they will share with you. Okay, so also in the spring, we have our case study program, and some of you may have done that program last spring when we did it with the juniors. So this year will be the same, but different. We'll have different representatives that are there. We'll have perhaps new cases. So this is a process that is always dynamic, and we want to make sure that it will do a college fair after that case study. It's a great time for you as a family to really learn about the college process and to hear from the admissions officers about what they saw in those different applicants and how a student is viewed. If you haven't done this program before, it's basically the students and parents, you will review 3 to 4 mock applications with admissions officers that come to Dunn specifically to work with you, and they will walk you through those applications. There will also be an online portion. So if you're not here at Dunn, we will do the same thing. We will be doing that online virtually. And once you look at those applications, then you as a team, you will get to decide who gets admitted and who gets denied and who gets waitlisted. So it's a really fun process, and I hope you'll join us for that. We also have college camp in May, at the end of May. This is before everyone leaves for summer break. And during this time is when we're going to go through the common application, essays, interviews, and we're going to request letters of recommendation. So my goal is always that by the end of the school year, students feel as though they are empowered in this process. They have the necessary tools. They also have everything they need done at this point, and they can take a break over the summer and enjoy themselves and explore the things that they want to explore over the summer. Maybe they get a job, or I hope they get some downtime and some time just to rest and relax, spend time with their family and friends. But like I said, time for exploration as well. So I don't want them feeling like there's a lot hanging over their head that they have to be thinking about in the summer, that they feel that they have the opportunity to really take that break. Throughout all of it, we will be using a program called Maya Learning, and it's a college search platform that is a pretty robust platform that I think you're going to find helpful. It's basically where all the college information will live. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that in just a minute. And I'll show you some slides so you can get an idea of what's coming in that. All right. And then when we hit senior year, we're going to start in August with another application workshop. And at that point, we can go a little bit further into some of the applications and look at any college specific questions that are being asked. The UC application is also, that's the University of California application, is also open at that time. So we can start working on that one. And we'll also be doing some more essay work and things like that. So just so you know, I want you to know too that like the college work is actually built into the student's schedule. It's not as though they're going to be on their own having to do a lot of that work. These will be things that they'll be able to work with me on during class and also with individual meetings. So during the seminar class, because that will be happening again in the fall, during that time, we will be really talking a lot more about strategy. We'll be going over the applications. We're doing more essay writing, supplement writing, things like that. So again, they'll have time to work with me both in a group and also individually. We'll do another college night for seniors and parents. We'll have an admissions panel, and they will talk to you about sort of what they're seeing on the horizon and what we need to be prepared for in the next application cycle. We'll also have a lot of college admissions officers that will be visiting us throughout the fall. Is there a question? Okay. This year, Gina was just telling me that we doubled our rep visits this year from last year. And I don't know, maybe we'll see another doubling of that for next year. A lot of people are coming to visit us. A lot of admissions reps are coming to visit us at the Dunn School. Today, I was meeting with Macquarie University, that's in Australia. And getting some more information from them, and also La Roche and Glion, which are in Switzerland. And so I think it's interesting that we have a lot of admissions officers that are from the US that are coming to Dunn to visit, but we also have a number of schools abroad that also are interested in our students and like meeting with them as well. And I always think kind of fascinating too for students as we talk about different options for them. Dunn students have been in a pretty international environment, and when they start looking at some of the schools abroad, they go, this is actually pretty interesting to me because it's widening my network of people, and they've really enjoyed being in this space of having lots of different cultures around and different languages, and then to be able to explore that on a larger scale, I think can be really interesting. Also, some of those schools are 3 years for college as opposed to 4. So if you're looking for some financial options that are affordable, Australia may be the place to look. Just throwing it out there, or other schools in Europe. All right, parent coffees, we will have those again in the fall. And then we have, like I said, our seminar classes and then individual meetings. And those to me are the time, like in September, we'll really start, those will ramp up again. And that's a time to really be strategizing around early applications and regular decision and really fine tuning the list at that point. So again, just what I want you to see is that there's a lot of support and time for us to meet. The most important thing I want you to take away from tonight too is like what people will say, well, what do colleges look for? Like the first thing they're going to look at is the transcript, and that is going to be an important piece of the puzzle for them. So we will, we'll have recommendations and we'll have all the extracurricular things and all of that. But the transcript is what a college is going to focus on, and they're going to look at the different courses that a student took and where they really explored a little bit further into different areas, and how did they build their foundation so that they are prepared for freshman year of college. So in the spring, as I said, we'll be doing a lot of that conversation around curricular planning and things like that. You'll also see on the Dunn transcript, and these are now in the Maya learning program. So when you log in, you can go under Maya Drive, and you will see the Dunn transcript that's there, and also any transfer transcripts. So let's say a student came in from another country or another school, the transfer transcript will also be there as well, so you can see all of them. What's important to know is that if students do work outside of Dunn, that work does not come onto our transcript. All that you will see on our transcript is just what's completed at Dunn. All right. Now, college will get all of the transcripts, and they will be able to see then, the number of courses students have taken and things like that. You'll also see that there's the cumulative weighted and unweighted GPA. And again, that's just based on done school work. All right. And, I also want people to not get too, I don't know, people get a little crazy around the GPA in that they're like, what's the number? And I always say the number isn't nearly as important as what it is derived from. Right. So what are the classes someone has taken? And did they take 3 classes a year, or did they take 5 classes or 6 classes a year? Did they take advanced courses? How are they building that academic foundation? And I think we can all tell stories about, hearing about students at different schools, and they'll, and the newspaper, I swear, I think every year you'll see something in the LA Times, and they'll say, this student with 4 point whatever GPA didn't get into a particular school. And I hate those kind of fear types of articles, but what they never tell you is that there's no looking at the curriculum. They're just telling you what the number is. And I'll say, let me see the senior curriculum for that student. And that may tell us something, because they may not have taken, a very rigorous senior year. And that isn't necessarily a good thing. And that can actually impact an admission decision. So, like I said, don't get too, I don't know, too worked up about those GPAs. The semester and trimester courses you will see, because at Dunn, during your students, they've been here since freshman year was on a semester system, and then we moved to trimesters for sophomore and junior year. So you will see those different things on the transcript. What's not included? Honors and awards, test scores. We don't put test scores on a transcript. Those are things that you own. We do not own those. We don't put sports or extracurricular activities, outdoor education. There's no discipline record. Those things don't go on a transcript. Again, we don't take courses from other high schools and put them on our transcript, or colleges or summer programs or anything like that. So it truly is just the grades and courses. Along with that transcript, we will also send something called the Dunn School Profile. And the profile is basically a roadmap to the transcript, and it tells the admissions officer. So you'll hear from Rick Clark, who's from Georgia Tech, about the school profile and how they're going to use that to really unravel what they're seeing on that transcript. What were the courses that were available to the student? Did we limit the number of advanced courses? Do we have AP? Do we have IB? All those different things. And what is the philosophy around the Dunn School? Do they have outdoor education? All of that is going to be in the school profile. So, and there's a link to it here. It's also on the Dunn School website under the college counseling page. You can click right on it and see all the information about that profile. And I think it's important to know, what, like, how are colleges going to be really looking at Dunn, and what are the things that they're going to talk about. Like this year we added things about round square, and we added information about the new program with Syracuse University, where they're teaching a college course right here on campus through Syracuse. That's a unique thing that we do at Dunn. Our entrepreneurship program is unique to Dunn. So those are things we want to make sure that that the colleges understand. All right. We'll talk for a minute here about standardized testing. Yay! There's always, it thinks of dynamic processes to standardized testing. This is an interesting kind of hot potato right now. And for the most part, colleges are staying in that test optional space, meaning you can submit test scores if that's something that's you feel represents you well, and you can choose not to if you don't want to send scores. There's a difference though between test optional, test blind, meaning we do not see scores. That would be like the University of California system or the California State University system. They cannot look at scores. They don't see the SAT or ACT. And even if you reported them, those are not something that they can see on their end. So, as we really strategize with your student about testing, this is a very individualized process. And I want you to know that you'll have the support to determine whether or not this is something that the road we want to go down or not. There's also a test preferred. I mean, there's all sorts of different ways that colleges are looking at these things. You might find that testing could be required for certain majors or scholarships. So we want to be careful with that too. For international students, there's a chance that you may have to submit test scores. So we want to make sure you're prepared for that if that's something that you have to do. And if you're a US student and you're applying to international universities, there's a good chance they're going to ask for some AP scores for some of those institutions. So we want to keep those on our radar. Some states require testing. They've gone back or never even went into the test optional space. So places like Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, and they're stay tuned because there may be more. If you're applying to a public university in those states, you're likely going to be required to submit test scores. As I said, the UC and CSU are blind for the SAT or ACT, but they will tell you if you have some AP scores, we'd sure like to see those. So AP meaning advanced placement. And while Dunn doesn't offer advanced placement courses, we do offer the exams at school. And guess what tomorrow is? Oh, it is the last day to register. If a student wants to take an AP exam in May, then we need to get them registered by tomorrow. And they can see Gina Plastino in the college counseling office and get registered tomorrow. The fee doesn't accrue until later, but students do need to register if they do want to take any advanced placement classes. This is especially important for juniors, and I just want to make sure it's on your radar. I don't ever want you to feel like you have to take those tests, but if you're in an advanced course right now, if you're in an advanced US history or advanced English 11, I mean, I would say it's a good idea to go online and just look at the practice test for the AP. And if you look at it and you say, wow, that's not for me, totally fine. But if you go, hey, with a little bit of work, I could probably do okay on this. You have until May to take the test. And to finish the curriculum and to do some of the self-study necessary to get yourself ready for that AP. Those exam scores can also yield some college credit at some institutions. And, if you're talking about a private school, that may save you $3,000 or $4,000 per class. So it can certainly add up. And when people say I want to apply for financial aid, I'm like, well, one of your options could be to take some AP exams to see if you might be able to get credit for a good score on one of those tests. All right. Also, let's see, MIT and Georgetown have returned to requiring the SAT or ACT for admission. We will be offering a practice ACT exam through Compass, and that's in December and through January. So December, I think they're actually going to open it up toward the end of November and give you the opportunity to do a practice test. And now what's nice about Compass is they're a test prep company, but they're not in, I like them because I don't feel like they really are. They want to give you a practice test. And if you decide you want to do prep after that, they're like, we're here to help you, but we are not going to tell you that you have to do that. So they're very, I think, test prep light. They will help you with these practice tests, but they're not going to hound you to do a lot of test prep. What is great though is that you can do this practice ACT in online on a Saturday. You just log in, you get the link, you log in, you will have your scores later on that day, usually within an hour after taking the test. And then we can sit there and go, let's look at a concordance chart and determine which test is better for you. Was it the practice SAT that you did back in October, or is it this ACT? All right, so my job is also to help you with that and determine which test is better for you. So I encourage you to take a practice ACT if you're thinking about sending in test scores down the road. So this is what that concordance chart looks like. And you can see that the SAT is over here out of a 1600 scale, ACT out of 36. And, say you got your PSAT scores back and you got an 1190. Well, you can see that the ACT is about a 26. So if you do the practice ACT and you get a 30 right out of the gate, then I'm going to say ACT might be a better test for you. They are different. And, it's interesting, I think, because some people will do better on one or the other. Some score in about the same range. So the ACT tends to be a little more literal, and that can be a little bit easier sometimes for second language speakers. Like if English isn't your first language, you're an international student here, then you might find the ACT is a little more to your liking. So I'm happy to give you more information about those, and we'll be sending out the link so that you can register to take that practice test if you would like to do that. You have already received your PSAT scores. You should have those. If you don't, please let me or let Gina know, because we have them and we can send them to you, or give you the way to log into your College Board account to access them. All right. And it's important to know too, the colleges don't care which, if they're going to, if you're going to send a test score, it doesn't matter whether it's going to be an SAT or ACT. If they're going to require it, they want you to send your strongest score. All right. Here are the actual test dates. If you decide that you want to take one of these tests, the SAT and ACT dates, you can see that they are on opposite or different Saturdays throughout the spring. And I just want to point out this December SAT date, just because it's the last time the SAT will be administered by paper. All right, so if for whatever reason you think that the paper version is a great one for you, you can take that on December 2nd. The registration has probably passed at this point. There may be some late registration options or the ability to go standby for that. I think the digital test is, another option that is as a good option. Or you can take the ACT, because they are old school and it will all be on paper if that's what you want to do. And again, those dates are there. The tests will also be administered. You can see what I like too. You've got some June and July dates. So if you want to wait till the summer or something, because that just feels like a time when you don't feel as much stress or pressure of AP exams and everything else, I think that's fine. These exams will also be available in August, September, October, November, things like that. And again, AP exams are held in the first 2 weeks of May, and registration ends tomorrow. And Gina's very excited to finally get those all done. All right. Okay, here's a little bit about Maya Learning. I just want to tell you how you will access that. So Maya Learning, as I said, is a platform for everything college related. You all have accounts already set up for you. And when you go, if you just Google or mayalearning.com, type in mayalearning.com, it will take you to a screen, and you will just simply choose sign in with Google. It's very easy. And you will use a Gmail account. It's the one that we have for you in Blackbaud. So if we have that Gmail account, it is registered for you. If you don't have a Gmail account, please email me or email Gina, and we can figure out maybe if there's another way to get you in to Maya Learning. So but Gmail is the easiest way to get in. And then once you're in, you will see a dashboard that looks like this. And the students actually got in today and they started what is called their survey, their junior year survey. Parents also have homework and they have a survey. You all have a survey to do as well. So the student survey, like I said, is a little bit longer, and these are really important because they give me so much information about what type of institution might fit you well, and a little bit more about you, and your family, and we can talk about in there too things like what types of institutions are important to you in terms of what types of colleges are you looking at. So the survey is due in January, so you have time. All right. So during the holidays, if you want to take it a little bit of time, the student one will take a little bit longer. And listen, I always think it's great because you're going into Thanksgiving and maybe the holidays in December, and I don't know, for students, sometimes it can be a little bit stressful because you may be around family that is asking you a lot of questions about, well, you're a junior now, where are you going to apply to college? And like, it's a lot because we're just starting the process. So I always think this is a good time if someone is asking you a lot of questions and you just don't know the answers yet, you can say, you know what, that reminds me, I need to go work on my survey. So that way you can get out of that conversation if you need to. And same thing goes for parents. Like this is a time for a real reflection too. We're going to ask you also to brag a little bit about your sons and daughters and tell us about them and the role they play in your family, the things that, that make you proud about them. So I look forward to reading those. Those will be due before we schedule our first meeting. All right. So I'll need that information so that I can start creating a list for you and start thinking about what types of colleges may be appropriate for you. So I think I put the deadline as like the end of January for these, but you can, if you want to schedule a meeting with me on January 10th, then I would need that survey done at least 2 days before that. So I have time to get through them all. All right. So Maya Learning. Now, not only do we have the fun surveys, but you'll see over here on the side that there's also a lot of other assessments and different things that we'll do in here. So there's character assessment. So if you want to, like people are asking often about Myers-Briggs tests and personality assessments, all of that stuff lives right here in Maya Learning. We'll be doing those during class and helping students to look at different types of careers and different strengths that they have. There's also that strengths finder, which I don't know if some of you may have done that as part of like a work thing, and then strengths finder, that's also here in Maya Learning, so students can see where those strengths are for them and what types of careers might be exciting for them. There's so much good information here from the Department of Labor and Statistics, where students can then look at, okay, I want to be, I don't know, I like math. So maybe what are some careers I can explore? Maybe I want to be an economist or an actuary or something like that. And then I can look and see which states have the highest growth in those particular areas. What is the median income? How many people will be retiring in that field? Like, it's really, really a deep dive. So it's a lot of fun, and things that we'll be doing in class, but you can also explore as a family too. And then you'll see a tab there also for universities over here. And this is where the students today, we were looking at, there's a search engine in there where students can pick different states. They can look at different regions of the country and then pick out some areas that they maybe want to visit, or things that they want to, different types of schools that they want to look at, will also be in there. There's financial plan information in here too, information about scholarships. All of our events will go in there. There's a portfolio students can actually start putting together as well. Things like they want to put a resume somewhere, they want to build that, they want to add information about a project that they did, and they want to put photos. There's lots of information they can put in that portfolio. And then the Maya Drive is where they will find their transcripts and things like that. So if you ever need an unofficial transcript, you can always just go to the Maya Drive. And there are resources that we also have in there that we're constantly building out. So feel free to check those out as well. Okay, that's a lot of information. I know. But I hope you'll have a chance to like just kind of play around in there. It's a really robust program. All righty. And just a few next steps, and then I'm going to turn it over to our special guests. We have a parent coffee coming up on Wednesday, December 6th. This is just for juniors. For parents of juniors, we'll do it both online and we'll also do it live in the CBLC. So I hope you'll join us for that 8:30 on Wednesday, December 6th. We'll have some coffee and some pastries, and it's just like an informal time to really talk about sort of what you're seeing now that we're in this a little bit. Maybe you've been into Maya learning, and we can kind of talk about how things are going at that point. You're going to sign into your Maya learning account. You're going to start working on those surveys. If you want to take a practice ACT, these are some of the dates. There's also some additional dates too, but these are some that you might see come up. And then there's also the review of the PSAT and practice ACT. All right. And we're going to determine whether or not we want to take a test in the spring. We're going to schedule college counseling appointments. You'll get a link to my calendar in December, and you can start scheduling for January. And then I also want to make sure you see too that we do have some school breaks. And so whether it's our winter break, or whether it's February, March, April, one of the breaks, I want you to think about those and start, if you're looking at planning some of those maybe college visits, now's the time, right? If it's going to be spring break or something like that, you're going to have a list soon in January. And then from there, we can start thinking about what schools you might want to visit. And maybe you want to do that over the summer, and that's great too. But I do want to put that on your radar, that we do have some nice breaks that will come up that will give you the opportunity to do some traveling, hopefully with your family. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I want to see if there's anything in the chat, any questions that we have at this point. Doesn't look like. I think we're good. All right. And now I want to introduce to you our guests for the evening. And I see Brennan Bernard. I see your face there. Hi, Brennan. So as I said, Brennan Bernard and Rick Clark are two people that I respect greatly in this field. And I'm very, very lucky to call them colleagues and friends. What I think is really interesting about this profession, I think would surprise most people, is how much time we spend together, both college admissions people and high school counselors. And we're together a lot at different conferences and things like that, where we're presenting information, we're doing research into different areas. And it keeps us always, I think, student focused, of really thinking like, how do we make this college process fun and sane and helpful to families, and keep it real for our students. So I always know when something is going on, if I've got a question, I can call Brennan, I can call Rick, I can, like, especially when we're talking about all the testing stuff, right, for Georgia. And I can say, hey, Rick Clark, like, what's the deal? Like, how's that really looking for you? And, what's the data looking like? And that can be really helpful. And I can share that information. And you'll also see Brennan Bernard, if you're reading Forbes, you will see him on a pretty regular basis, because he writes quite often on the college process for Forbes. So you'll see him there. So, but on that note, I'm sending it over to you, my friends.
Thank you. Well, I think the take-home message is you are in good hands. I mean, Terri is one of the best in the field, and obviously has really built out a lot of great supports for you all. And I think we want to just, and I'll share some slides here in a second, but I think we want to just kind of zoom out a little and talk as you start to think about this experience coming up in the next month, 2 months, 3 months, 12 months, kind of how to approach it. So, and then we want to leave some time to really dig in and hear what's on your minds. So I am going to share my screen. Let's see here. Now it has disappeared. Just one sec here. Rick, I don't know if you want to say something when I bring this up.
Sure. Well, first of all, good to see everybody, and thanks for taking some time tonight. I was thinking the exact same thing actually as Terri was walking through all that information. Just you're extremely lucky to be there at Dunn, and just in incredibly good hands. I have my son is a freshman in high school, and then I have a daughter who is a 7th grader. And last night I was actually at a school in Charleston, South Carolina, talking to 9th graders and their parents. And one of the things that I've been saying a lot at my own house and got a chance to say on an actual stage to a couple hundred people last night was use your resources. I mean, I think throughout high school and certainly into college, that's maybe one of the biggest pieces of advice. And I say that also as someone that teaches college students and employs a lot of college students. Just use your resources, and you have some phenomenal ones there at Dunn. So don't take that for granted. All of what she just walked through is a blueprint for you to end up with a lot of great choices and options. So again, looking forward to the conversation tonight.
Yeah. And like Terri ended on, this is an exciting time. But so what we want to do, and we're going to use the chat a bunch as we go through this, and so prepare to be active, and we want to start with kind of a word association. So this might especially be good for the parents who are here, but also students. So when you hear the word college, what do you think about? Like what words come to mind? Just throw them in the chat there. Like what are the words that jump into your mind? Money, okay. Studying, hard, career, opportunity, fun, success. Yep. These are all great. So Rick and I have, between the two of us, we've done this all over the country and world. Rick works for the State Department, doing presentations in countries across the world about options in the US. And so he's done a lot of this abroad, and we've done it throughout the US. And a lot of these are the same things that we hear from other people, right? This idea of opportunity, fun, success, future, career. So these, you are right in line with the rest of the world with your answers. And it really is a time of opportunity, of excitement, of fun, of thinking about your future and success. And so now we want to do a little shift, and we're going to add one word, and that is, there we go, admission. So when you think of college admission, what are the words that come to mind? Throw them in the chat. Hard, essays, competition, intense, stress, writing, essay, scary. Yep. So again, you're spot on, right? You are, if there was any question of whether you are normal, there is no question any longer. You are right in line with everyone else everywhere. These are often the same words that come into people's minds, right? And so isn't it interesting how all we had to do is add one word, admission, and immediately that whole idea of opportunity and excitement and fun and everything kind of transition to stress and hard and competition and all these kind of negative connotations. And you can see from this slide, right, that like there's a lot going on right? You're getting a lot of information. I think Terri even mentioned this, from a lot of different sources, right? It's coming at you from all sides. And so our hope for you, and we're going to go through just a number of truths tonight that we see as we approach the admission experience. But our hope for you is that you can focus on the first rather than the second, right? Rather than the stress and the complication and the scariness of it, that you can focus on that idea of opportunity and not let the admission piece of college bring you down. And it doesn't have to be a negative, scary, stressful experience. It can be an exciting one of opportunity.
Right. Great. Yeah. So, just to put that into a phrase, I mean, we really do believe and have seen, and hope for you that your college admission experience will be more like college itself. This idea of exploring, this idea of being open, and relational, right? A lot of those words you put in there around fun and opportunity, and that all connotes this idea that it's done together. And so, in our book and in our writing, we focus a lot on family, because I think done well, and what I see, when students arrive at college, one way or the other is, you can arrive where the college admission experience has sort of been more of a wedge that's divided, or it can be an opportunity to really listen, to kind of stay on the same page, to give a lot of grace to one another, and to be, ultimately landing somewhere ready to go, and closer actually than maybe you were to start out. So I think the big thing is our hope. Again, some of this is truths and some of this is hopes, really. It's kind of a mix of the two. And one of them is this idea that we hope that you will really think like a college student. And again, as somebody that's around college students a lot, they are all about testing assumptions, right? They're all about doing their research to figure out where something's going to lead, instead of having a foregone conclusion in mind. And so, again, our hope is that instead of sitting down and saying, like, this is the place I need to end up, or there's like 3 places where I think I could actually be happy or make friends or ultimately lead me to success, to kind of just stay open to where this may lead you. And again, I mean, I think Terri really started it out so well by saying, I mean, all these people that are coming through and visiting your school, just listening, being open when stuff comes in the mail, when you get emails from places that you never heard of, to not just sort of shut the door on that, but to really try to think of where you're going to end up, and that is in college, and think more like a college student about this than maybe sometimes high school students do, which can be very much like X plus Y equals Z, and I need to do these certain things in order to end up in a certain final result. So going to the next slide.
Yep. So there we go. We have a little pop quiz for you. And no cheating here, no Googling these answers, as because we really want to kind of set the stage of what we're looking at here as we think of opportunity. So use the chat to again share your answers. But how many colleges or universities would you say are in the US? Would you guess are in the US? 5,000, 4,000. Wow. 9.
A lot.
Yeah. Well, obviously this is a very attuned group. So there are 4,000 plus or minus colleges in the US, with around 3,000 four-year colleges.
A couple of people nailed that.
Yeah. And and we're just talking the US, but as Terri mentioned, there, especially at Dunn School, I think a lot of students are looking at other opportunities abroad, and whether it be Australia or the UK or Canada, or I mean, wherever it might be. Yeah. So this gets exponentially that much bigger when you think of the world as kind of your education landscape. Okay, so just focusing on the US though for now, of all those colleges, how many colleges accepted less than a quarter of applicants? Like, so admit rates of 25% or less. How many would you guess of those 4-year colleges? Let's just stick with the 4-year colleges. What would be your
I
guess?
saw 500, 2,500, 450, 500 a couple times.
Okay.
Again, 550, 400, 2,000.
All right. So here it is. So of those 3,000 4-year colleges, there's only about 100 schools that accepted less than a quarter of their admit rate. But if you were to read the papers and to listen to the news stories and things like that, you would guess that it was larger than that, right? You'd guess that it is harder to get into college than it actually is. So as kind of a follow-up to this, what would you guess the average admit rate is of colleges and universities in the country? Like what percentage? What would be the average admit rate of all those of those 3,000 colleges?
I got 70%, 75%, 60, 80, 60.
Yeah. So, I mean, people are right in the ballpark, right? The average 4-year admit rate for 4-year colleges is 65%. So this whole narrative of like it's impossible to get into college is pretty skewed, right? Like it is actually not that hard to get into college. So and Terri talked a bit about testing. What percent of test optional schools, and what percent of schools are test optional of those 4-year colleges? What would you guess? Do not require
70, 75, 85,
Yep.
80, 40,
20.
20.
All right. Well, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. 80% of 4-year colleges are test optional, and that number kind of changes a little bit here and there depending on the year, but especially since the pandemic, it was already moving in that direction, and it has skewed even more in that direction. And again, like Terri said, there's state systems like Georgia and Florida and some others that are requiring tests, and then states like California, where my school is and your school is, that the state schools are not even looking at tests and won't look at them. So there are a lot of options, I guess. I mean, that's the take home here. Final question. This is the hardest one. Oh, there it is. What defines a good school? How about that? Food.
Nice.
Yo, game on. It's dinner time out there, so I guess that location, sports, right? Community.
Somebody said depends.
Yeah, these are some great ones.
Majors, place, happiness.
Yeah. So I mean, you're spot on, right? And this is I think this is kind of telling in terms of this answer, right? Is like it's going to be different for everyone. What a good school is for Olivia is not going to be the same for Harriet, and is not going to be the same for Camille and Malia. I mean, so it really is so dependent. And so I think as you start to do your search, there are going to be people who talk about rankings, and there are people going to talk about this school and that school, but really allowing yourself the opportunity to define what a good school is for yourself, I think, is really important. All right. Oh.
Yep. So, I mean, just to kind of put that into, again, just a phrase, getting into college, right, as we just sort of showed you, is not the real challenge. So if that was part of the consternation or stress, I think being able to take that off of your mind. I think, we talk a lot about kind of words mattering, which is why we start with that word association. One of the things that you'll hear journalists say a lot, and honestly, even some of the people that come through your school, a lot of college admission folks like myself and my colleagues will use this word process. Almost always, in fact, they will call it a process. And we want to challenge you, and kind of our hope would be that you'll eliminate that word from your vocabulary when you talk about this, because when you talk about a college admission process, it sort of connotes this idea of this kind of a picture, right? That there is sort of a way to go from being a currently orangish person to a purple person, right? And if the goal is to become purple, then somebody's telling you that you've got to do X to get to green. And if you don't do that right, you'll never become blue, let alone purple, right? Meaning you got to take this certain class, you got to make this certain grade on a test. It's wrong if you don't participate in this sport or that activity. There is a recipe, there is a formula. And the girl down the street got into the school you want to go to, and here's how she did it. So follow this exact map, or everything's going to go off the rails. What we see is that's patently false, that there's many ways to kind of go about this. And so we want you to replace process with experience. If the mindset shift is from, I have to do this in a certain order, or do it the way I heard, or somebody on YouTube said that this is it, and I'm really feeling like the pressure is on, that's not going to leave you open to the really unpredictability sometimes, which is the adventure of this. And so if you replace that with experience, it becomes a lot more relational also, because when you Google process, you do get stuff like this. You never get people together. But if you Google and go to Google Images for experience, it is very relational. And college admission all the way through should be relational. It should be about you with your friends. It should be about you with your family. It should be about you with your college counselors, you with your teachers, listening, interacting, learning. And so we hope that you'll shift that word from process to experience.
We also hope, while it is relational, we hope you will escape your echo chamber. This is an echo chamber. If you that's the image there, right? That you will find ways, right? You're probably gonna travel in circles where you hear similar schools mentioned, you see similar decals on the back of cars, you see people wearing the same similar kind of hoodies or t-shirts or whatever with college names on it. But our hope for you as you go into this experience is that you will, and it sounds like Dunn students are pretty good at doing this, that you'll escape kind of those schools that you've heard of again and again, and that you'll look outside the schools and the environment that a lot of your peers are talking about and are kind of in the ecosystem, and think about other opportunities, other ways to look at the college experience, and to kind of think beyond what's just around you.
Great. Yeah, so I mean, this is a bit of a fill in the blank here, but college admission success, what is that? And I think a lot of times, especially as juniors, it can become, well, it would be getting into my first choice, or getting into everywhere I apply, or whatever. I really think though that in my experience, ultimately the students who are the happiest in the senior spring are the students who have choices, that they did stay open-minded, that they did consider a variety of places, and that ultimately they didn't feel like they had to go somewhere in particular, or that they were sort of sacrificing in some way, but instead, like, they knew why they applied where they did. They felt good about every place they applied. And ultimately, they ended up in a spot where there were choices and options. And I think as a parent, a lot of parents question and wonder, like, what's my role in the college admission experience? What am I trying to do? And I think that our hope, again, is that you'll be coaching students towards choices and options, and that's really success. So I guess just to transition a bit into like, what are colleges looking for, and what are we looking at? We're going to kind of cover both. But again, very simply put, what are colleges looking for? They are looking for good high school students. And what does that mean? Again, Terri set us up well here, right? That you are taking classes in high school that you're interested in, that you're taking classes in high school that are going to challenge you, and that outside of those classes, you're being a really, impactful community member, right? And you can do that in so many different ways. Again, this goes back to where there is no recipe, there is no perfect formula. At Georgia Tech this year, our first year class was a little under 4,000. And in that, you have so many different types of students who took all kinds of different classes or lots of different interests. Some who played 3 sports and some who could not hit a wiffle ball off of a tee, right? That there is just such variety here. There's not a must do X again to get in, but instead, like, you as a high school student become a good college applicant, and there's a direct through line, because good high school students become compelling college applicants, ultimately become good college students. And so we can talk a lot about the nuts and bolts of everything, but fundamentally that is what colleges are looking for.
Yeah, and so we do want to talk a little bit about kind of the, what colleges are looking for and looking at, and how it's being done. And we can then we just want to kind of introduce this, and then we can talk about this a little more when we do a kind of a Q&A at the end. But the take home is that there really is no magic formula, right? There's 2 main ways that colleges are going to be doing admission review. And the first one is kind of formulaic admission. And that is really the way colleges are looking at applications. Is they're taking in this way of review, they're setting the bar, right? Or the hurdle at a certain level. And they say that, okay, any student who can kind of clear that bar will be admitted. So, if they're saying, we want students that have a 3.0 GPA and this test score, and if they kind of clear that bar, then they're in, right? And that's typically schools that are not in the single digit admit rates, right? Or even double, like even low 20s and things like that. These are schools that have more space, that have more open enrollment. They, you can often go on a lot of larger state schools. You can go on their website, and they have like a calculator, like University of Iowa or
The whole Cal State system.
Yeah, Cal State system. You can basically enter in your statistics, and it will tell you which campus or which, where you'll be a competitive applicant. And so that's that kind of formulaic admission, right? You clear that bar, and you know that you are likely to be admitted.
Yeah. So as schools receive more applications from academically talented students, there comes a point where raising the bar just doesn't make sense, because they're trying to not just enroll students who can do well on their campus academically, but they're going to contribute when they're there. And I think probably at a place like Dunn, this is pretty easy to understand, because Dunn's trying to create a campus culture as well. They have the luxury to admit students they want to admit. Of course, first and foremost, got to be able to do the academic work, but they're trying to create a certain community there. They're trying to create a certain culture, and Dunn is fundamentally different than a school 5 miles away or 50 miles away, because each institution, right, be it at the high school level, at the college level, or even if it's a company, there's a culture and there's a differentiation. And so at holistic admission, the concept is that, all right, yes, what you take matters. And we talked about this earlier with your school profile. The very first thing that a college admission person does when they open up an application, the very first question on their mind is, where does this student go to school? What could they have taken while they were there? What did they choose to take while they were there? How did they do? And how did they progressively do throughout their time in high school? That is where we start. And that does not matter which institution you're talking about. That is the academic touchstone for everybody, right? And we have that through the profile, and that really, we talk about that a lot. This is the touchstone. This is the starting point. Testing is a question mark these days, as we've talked about already. Maybe you should send it, maybe you shouldn't. One of the real upsides, again, of being at Dunn is you're at a place where there's a lot of history of understanding what's happening and relationships with these schools. So you're going to be very well advised based on your list. You don't need to worry about all 4,000 schools. You need to worry about the 9 or 11 or whatever it is that you're applying to. And Terri and her team are going to give you good guidance as to, do you need to send a test at all? Do you want to send your test to this school? Maybe there's 3 of the ones you're applying to where you should and 3 where you shouldn't. It's nuanced. It's a complex answer, but you don't need to worry about the whole landscape. You worry about the places you're interested in. And again, use your resources, listen to the experts that are right there with you in the school building and there for that reason. We won't go into great detail here, but one of the things I'll just say is, at a place like Georgia Tech, in a place where, you know, you get a lot more sort of solid applicants academically than you have spaces available, you actually get pretty quickly past the numbers and start looking at things like what we call contribution to community. This concept of, what have you been involved with? And what's your impact been on other people? Maybe that is through a team, maybe that's through a club, maybe that's through working. Who knows the way you've done that? Again, it's not going to be the same for every student. But fundamentally, the question people like myself ask, and in committee right now as we're reading, we're asking is, will this student be missed when they leave high school? And there's lots of ways that you can leave a hole. And that is your goal as a high school student, is to leave a hole in your community when you're gone. To have a club advisor, a coach, somebody who just desperately kind of wants to sabotage you from graduating because they can't imagine what it's going to be like when you're gone. If you're doing that in some capacity, you will be a compelling college applicant. There is no question. Writing, we could do another hour-long thing on, and we're not going to do it. But we're happy to take questions in Q&A, but it will matter at these type of schools. You'll have a lot of latitude. You'll have a lot, you already have a class along these lines, so you know this already. I'm not worried about your ability to write, going to a school like Dunn. We know you can write. It's more about, what story do you want to tell, and thinking about it that way. And I think a lot of students don't think about it that way. They just sort of do what's asked of them on the application, but that is not how we read. We don't read the way you do the application. When you do the application, you typically, you do one section, maybe a week later you do another section, you go back and look at this. We read as a story, and we read, almost, think about it this way, every time we open an application, it's like we've got a pencil and a blank piece of paper, and we're starting to sketch who you are. Are we getting a complete picture of that, right? And each little part allows us to go back after the sketch and color in a picture, so we understand where you go to school, what you've taken, how you've done, what you're doing outside the classroom, what you chose to write about, the letters of recommendation we're receiving, sometimes the interviews. This is the picture you create for us. And your goal when you're done is to say, I feel good about the picture I just submitted to them.
Yeah, and it comes back to what we had in one of the first slides, which is kind of, you know, why are you going to college, right? And why do you do the things you do in high school, and what is some of your motivation? Part of telling the story is about kind of sharing your why with the college. Kind of, what is your personal mission, and how does that meet the mission of the school that you're looking at? So this next truth is kind of this idea of how is greater than where. Like, how you go about college admission and how you go about your college experience once you get there is a lot more important than where you go, right? or where you look, or where you, so the way in which you go about this experience, the way in which you engage is much more important than the actual where, because you can be successful at a number of places. It's just a matter of what you do with the opportunities you have. And so I will also, so this image here on the right, just, you can throw in the chat again, what would you say that that 75% represents? Go ahead and put your thoughts. The 75%, what does that represent in college admission?
Somebody put SA, I see.
Okay. Any other ideas? Just checking to make sure everybody.
Grades, things you can't control, grades. Yeah. Those are a couple of them. Okay,
Victoria was close, but actually the 75% is actually, is actually what you do control in admission. So contrary to what some people think, you actually control a lot more of this experience than you sometimes feel like it sometimes feels like, right? Like, you get to, again, with the how and the where, right? You get to choose where you look, where you apply, how you apply, right? Where you eventually end up enrolling. Like, all these pieces are in your control. The only thing you don't control is the decision that Rick and his colleagues make in admission, right? Whether or not you're admitted. And that's the 25% that you don't control. The rest of this around this experience, you control. And so if you can kind of reframe the way you're looking at this as like, okay, this admission thing is something that's happening to me, and so much of it is uncertain, out of my control. I think it is more empowering to think like, okay, I actually control a lot of this, and I get a lot of choices in this. And so kind of centering on that is a lot more, I think this will make it a lot more meaningful journey for you.
Yep, apparently this is the Venn diagram portion of our presentation. I guess the big truth here that we've kind of come to find is it seems that a lot of parents feel like the biggest gift they can give their kids when it comes to college is the ability or willingness to pay for wherever you want to go. And a lot of parents put pressure on themselves to be able to do that and make a lot of big sacrifices and able to be able to do that. One of the things that we've found through the time, though, is the best gift you can really give when it comes to the money side of things is not a blank check, but instead it's just honesty and early conversations about finances. And fundamentally, the way to think about this is, what are we willing to pay? What are we able to pay? And if there's a gap between those two, being honest about explaining that gap, right? Okay, yes, we can afford this school, not willing to pay for it. And here is why. No, we're simply not able to afford that. And here's why. This idea of just being honest and talking through it, it is reasonable to say, I don't want to work till I'm 74. I want to be able to take vacations. I don't want to sell the second house. Like, that is totally reasonable if you have that conversation as a junior. If you have that conversation in the summer prior to senior year before an application is ever submitted. But what's not cool and what is not healthy and what is always going to end up in a kind of rough spot is senior year, don't say a word, student applies, gets in, financial aid package comes back, it's April, and now that conversation is happening. Nobody wants to be in that situation. Terri and Brennan don't want to referee that and moderate that on the high school side, and I absolutely don't want to, and nor am I at all qualified to shepherd that conversation on the college side. So the gift is early and honest conversations about money.
Yeah, and not just about money, but just about kind of overall expectations and conditions around admission, right? Like if your expectation is that, you know, as a family or as a parent, that your student will not go to school all the way across the country or world, like having those conversations early before you get into like, okay, now I have a bunch of acceptances and I really want to go to Australia, but that was never really something we were considering. Those are important things to have on the front end of things, rather than wait until, you know, like, oh, you know, some families say, well, we probably won't get in anyway, so we'll just worry about that when we get there. Not a good plan. Not a good.
Not a good plan.
So and again, we keep coming back to family, and that's where we really kind of center a lot of our work and our writing. That this really is an experience about family, and it can be a really fun way of coming together as a family. However you define family, right? And so this experience of college admission, whether it's visiting schools, whether it's having these meaningful conversations about the future and expectations and things like that, this really can be about family. And so it's important for parents to understand, right, that being a teenager is not easy, right? We all were one. I have two of my own, one in college and one who's a senior in high school. So I get it. But there is a lot going on for students. And especially nowadays, and especially, you know, coming out of the pandemic. And I mean, I think there's a lot to contend with. And we have asked, you know, all across the country and the world, we've asked students, about their fears and their hopes. And we've just kind of put a bunch of them together. We've kind of like try to hit on the ones we see most commonly. And so I think this is especially, it's useful for parents to see, but also for students to see that they're not alone in some of the fears and the uncertainties and the kind of discomfort they're feeling around just their future. And so so these are just some of the things that students are feeling, and these are some of the things that get funneled into the college admission experience. And so I think just things to be aware of, you know, this idea of kind of letting others down or letting themselves down or being lonely, or this idea of fear of failure, right? Here are some of the hopes that we often hear, that they'll be successful, they'll be independent, they'll make connections, they'll meet new people, right? So this is the aspirational piece of things. They're looking for colleges that will prepare them for the outside world, or to set them up with great learning opportunities. Then we also ask students what they feel like they would like to say to their parents, but they don't feel like they can. And here's some of the things that we often hear, with a shout out to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You know, these are things that students are feeling kind of pressure from, often from their parents in this experience. And I think as a parent, it was really has been and continues to be useful to me to realize that even though my children are not saying these things, a lot of times they're feeling these things. And there's a whole bunch of them. That we often stress them out, and that there's a lot going on, and that maybe they're not seeing things the same way we are in terms of expectations, and that our kids don't want to disappoint us. And so these are just, I think, good things for us to be aware of as parents. Rick?
So flipping it, I think what you're sort of saying there is more grace, right? And more listening and just empathy. It's also not that easy being a parent, right? We love our kids. I mean, that's kind of how our whole book starts, really, and something that I've kind of come to realize. And now that I have my own kids, and I employ a lot of people that are in their 20s and early 30s who, don't have kids, and I kind of have to remind them, like, when we release admission decisions and 30 seconds later you get like a pretty vitriolic email from somebody, and you get cussed out or called names, or people are in the lobby the next day after you release decisions, extremely angry. That is just love in disguise, right? It's just a really unfortunate way that love manifests itself. And we know as parents, sometimes we hear ourselves saying things to you and we're like, I can't believe this is coming out of my mouth. Like, I know this sounds like I'm nagging. I know I sound like I'm crazy. And so I think just grace, right? Going both ways. When we seem to be losing our mind, we probably are. We're trying to find our way. Like, there's not a blueprint for this. And honestly, we're doing our best, but to be reminded that it comes because we love you, right? And because we want the best for you. And we know we don't do that perfectly. And so both ways, right? Grace and just more empathy and more sort of vision of not just the next couple of years, but like the years well beyond that too. And I think if both sides keep that in mind, this will be a more healthy, unifying experience.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, we talk about this in the book, but it means something to say it, right? And to call it out for what it is, and for parents to tell our children that we're proud of them and that we love them, and for students to tell your parents that you love them and that you're grateful for them, that you're grateful for the sacrifices they're making to send you to a school like Dunn and to create opportunities for you. And so we'll end on kind of this one truth, and that's, you don't have to do this, you get to do this, right? And so if you can think about this admission experience as something that you really had the privilege to do, and kind of center on gratitude rather than like, I got to get through this, right? Like Terri brought up kind of the kind of 12 months ahead of you, right? And what lies ahead in terms of like all the structures that Dunn has in place to support you through this. And that's so you don't have to feel like this is something I just have to get through. It's so you can feel like this is something I'm empowered to do. This is something I get to do. This is something I have the privilege to do, rather than this is a slog that I just need to survive, right? And so we want to just kind of end there and like, you know what, this is a great opportunity. If you want to take this QR code, there's just a bunch of resources here that we've found useful, different links and things like that, and you can that QR code will take you to a document that has them. But colleges that changed lives, less high school stress. There's a time management activity that Making Caring Common has developed, and with challenge success. And it basically, it's a sheet that you can kind of put in your different activities, and you can kind of look at your week and your day and see like, how am I spending my time, and am I making enough time for the things I love and for rest and for all those things. So some good opportunities there. And then this QR code will take you to our website if you want to get on our newsletter that we're developing to keep in touch. And so with that, that's a lot. But we, Terri, we'd be happy to take some questions and see what's on people's minds, and we'll go from there.
That sounds great. And, like some of the things I was writing down as you were talking, and Tori, I've commented because Tori and I both picked up on when, you know, you were talking about what is like, are you leaving a hole behind at this, at the institution where you're at the college or the high school that you're leaving, right? So, and I literally have written in, you know, recommendation letters, like, I can't imagine what our campus is going to be like when, you know, when Bobby or Susie ever leaves, because there's so much goodness that they've brought to the experience at Dunn. And so it's a really interesting thing to talk about. I really like that. And I hope for students, they think about what is that, you know, what is that experience for them, and how are they contributing to that school community, in their way, and not just their school community, but their local community as well, right? What are the gifts and talents that they have that they love sharing with other people? And everyone has those things, you know? So I really like that. And then I liked you talked about it being love in disguise. That was really good. So when people are a little, you know, ramped up about things. And I often think too that around this process, people can get, you know, I mean, it can cause some anxiety and things like that. But I often feel like too, sometimes it's, if we unpack that and really think about what it's coming from, it's often that our family is going to change and things are going to be
Mhm.
different. And
Yeah.
that creates its own dynamic that is also part of all this for a student, for parents. Even if you're at a boarding school, it's still going to be different. You know, you're now going to be in a more independent space, even more so than at the boarding school. So I don't
Mhm.
know. I like to think of this experience as a really fun and positive one. And I'm like, if you're ever feeling anxious about it, come and see me, because we need to talk about where that's like, what's going on and how we can, you know, manage that together.
It's
So
it's
anyway, I
it's
love that.
yeah, it's layered with emotion.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. I know. So I'm hoping for we'll have some questions here popping in. Anybody have anything, any burning questions? I loved all the
Oh,
responses people had.
can
Yeah,
I
Dave
ask?
threw some good
I have
ones.
something to ask. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I liked your comment. The students are like, it's not like it was 30 years ago, you know, because of course I'm mapping it to my own experience, probably about 30 years ago. But one thing that feels different to me as I'm, you know, starting down this road with our son versus what I remember. What I remember when I was a kid is like, okay, you know, college was important. You know, it certainly felt like something that I wanted to do, and um but I didn't have like a, it wasn't like a, you know, I'm gonna, you know, I'm on a path to be an engineer, I'm on a path to be a doctor, I'm on a path to be a lawyer, whatever. That sort of, I'm here to go down this road or even this particular major. and and so I guess I'm curious, you know, and this may just be an impression I'm getting, is there more of a trend towards like an expectation around students coming into college knowing with a degree of specificity what they want to be leaving with, versus it being college itself being a discovery process? Or is that different at different schools? Like, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. I think that it's that's a great question, and I think there is kind of a dominant narrative around that. Like, you need to know, you need to identify your passion, and you need to know what you're going to study. And at some schools, that's a reality, right? Like if you're applying to a computer science program or a business program or engineering or something like that, it is true. But I think the majority of students are still applying undeclared and are still exploring, and it still is a opportunity to explore. I mean, there's a lot of conversation about the value of college right now and around the return on investment and things like that. And so there is a push towards kind of identifying what you want to study, but I encourage folks to resist that, because the reality is most students change their major at least once and often multiple times.
Yeah,
So
David,
so oh, go ahead.
I love that question because it's so important, I think, And I started to see the shift around, I remember it was like 08, 09, when all of a sudden there was the economic stuff going on, and people all of a sudden, this whole narrative around return on investment, and you better know what you're going to major in, and you everything's pre-professional. We have to know what we're going to do. And prior to that, there was a lot more conversation around the liberal arts and why those were important. And then all of a sudden, it just became about this better lead to this job. And it was a really interesting thing. And I kind of wish that more college presidents would have gotten around that and really talked about that, you know, we're going into college to explore. And the fact is, these careers that kids are going to go into haven't been invented yet. What they need to understand is how to think. And they need that breadth of knowledge, because there will be so many different careers that will come their way for this generation. And so I think we're in a weird kind of space in some ways, because kids and so many students that I talk to will say, well, I have to know what I'm going to major in. And like, where is this coming from? But they feel a lot more pressure. And in some cases, the applications themselves will say, well, what do you think your major is going to be? And often at a college fair, the first question they're going to get asked is, well, what do you want to study?
Right.
I'm like, can we back off on that a little bit and allow students to explore and to, we're not undecided, we're still deciding. So I will get on a soapbox about that, but I think it's really fascinating. I'd love to hear your thoughts too, Rick.
Yeah, no, I mean, my head went immediately to cost has been the driver of that. There's no question. And it manifests itself in lots of different ways. I mean, the overall cost, the return on investment piece, even the concept around AP credit and dual enrollment and all the things that you've already done that you're bringing in that are theoretically some type of either accelerator or cost saver. I mean, that you're right. I mean, that tipping point, I think, of the Great Recession changed that narrative and just that mentality drastically. Partly, I think some positives have come out of that, but one of the negative pieces has been a bit too much focus, I think, on, the truth is, though, like Brennan said, the majority of students still are switching their major. I mean, 40% of our students if you look at when they applied and then the beginning of their sophomore year, 40% are not in the major that was on their application. And that's at a place that's fairly specialized with not a huge breadth. I mean, we have 38 majors, right? Versus, some comprehensive schools that might have 150 majors. So I'm sure those percentages are even higher.
Right. And again, it is different also if you're looking at some schools internationally, because some schools in the UK, I mean,
Sure.
You do need to go right into a path,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
You need to go into the School of International Studies or whatever it might be, business, and it's a little more dictated, but there's still opportunity to explore.
Agreed.
Yeah, hey, Wynton Smith, or if I could just comment briefly on that. I've got a sophomore at Cal Poly right now, and my junior down there at Dunn School, but this is an interesting discussion and what we have seen and how things are changing, because my oldest, initially we thought he was going toward the military, and I thought, hey, being a military guy, I can advise him, I can coach him in this arena. But then he said, I want to get into agricultural business, I want to go to Cal Poly. And the application process steers you in that direction, as Terri mentioned about declaring a major and what specifically, let's talk about the experiences and things and why you should be admitted to, the agricultural school of Cal Poly. And then we got there, he was admitted, and I met with the dean of the school. And I said, I'm a military guy. I really don't have a lot of advice to offer my son, getting into agricultural business. He said, you know what? It's okay. Let him get into Cal Poly and he's going to figure it out. He's going to discover it's, he may go down the path. And sure enough, my son now is looking at construction management as a minor. But it's amazing. So I guess I would have to, initially I thought, hey, we're steering them in this direction. The application process sort of steers them in this direction. But when they touch down, when they land in that university environment, then they just sort of start blossoming.
Right.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, they get exposed to older students and faculty, and yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
I have a
Yeah.
question along that same line though, because I've heard that some kids might apply to college and maybe, you know, if you say you're going in this school within the university, then you're more likely to get in. Like, does that, and then it doesn't matter because once you're at least in, then you can switch and navigate. I don't know
So
what to do with that information.
have this I don't know if you can see this. I have this this mug that I keep on my desk. It depends, right? So you know, it it really does. I mean, so some schools you know, are very limited, like they have kind of caps on the major. So like if you apply to a school, let's just use computer science, for example, like they will only take a certain number of computer science majors. And once you're there, you cannot transfer into that major. So like if somebody really wants to study computer science, they might say, oh, well, it's less competitive to get in as a history major. So I'll apply as a history major. And then once I get there, I'll try to transfer. And that kind of backdoor approach doesn't necessarily work. At other schools, it is much more open and you can transfer really fluidly between majors. And so I really encourage students as they're looking at different schools to ask those questions of the admission office. So like how easy is it to transfer your second year? And do you need to, are you going to need to spend a whole nother year of college because you transferred majors just to kind of regain the credit? You know, engineering curriculum is pretty set. I mean, Rick will tell you that from Georgia Tech. I mean, there's so asking those critical questions, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add to that is here again, I mean, you're just extremely fortunate to be where you are, right? Because Terri, they know, like you have a college counseling office who knows, and you don't need to worry about all the schools, like just the ones you're applying to. What are their policies? What has the experience been for prior Dunn students? Terri and her colleagues have relationships with these folks, as she said at the beginning, where they can call and ask if they're not sure, maybe if it's a new school to them or whatever. But you know, you're right, it's all over the map, and increasingly so because some highly impacted majors are forcing schools to make policy decisions. And so this is a shifting landscape as well.
Other questions?
I have a quick one. So many kids are on these like abbreviated schedules now, right? Because they're either going to apply early decision, or they're going to audition, or they're a recruited athlete, or they have all these crazy like recruited, like a difference in deadlines. So I wondered what you guys thought about how schools are not catering to, but how they're supporting those, like, and probably this is a Terri question, maybe those kids who are on a different deadline system than regular decision kids, because that's making it really hard for counselors who have these kids who are like, by August 1, we need to hit submit, you know, because we're going to have to do pre-screens and we're going to have to go to camps and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, again, Terri can probably speak to this best, but you know, the way the calendar has shifted in college admission, I think it's reasonable for most students, and this is why, you know, what is it, early November, and this is why you're starting in junior year to have the time to make intentional decisions and to plan thoughtfully. Because the reality is, I think every student should probably plan on having at least one application submitted in early November, and just to kind of work back from that. And like you said, if they're in performing arts, they're going to have to do pre-screens and things like that. And if they're considering the military, for example, and some of the military academies, they're going to need to get congressional nominations and things like that. And so it's all working back from there. But that's the beauty of being at a Dunn, where they're going to make sure that that's all happening thoughtfully.
On schedule, yeah.
Schedule.
Yep. And that's why I think too, Tori, you know, and with every student, it's such an individualized process, right? And it's why we're doing college night for juniors in November too, right? That we want to give everybody time to to be able to explore, you know, on their pace and at the things that they want. And certainly with the athletic piece, right? There's, you know, that process can, you know, or experience can change the landscape a bit as well. But I mean, in every case, it's such a, what I love about being at Dunn is that every student is very unique and has their own path, and I just enjoy sort of supporting them in their way. Having it been at schools where they were, you know, a bit larger, and when I was at Punahou and we had 450 seniors and sent more kids to the Olympics than any other school, right? I mean, there's a lot of those athletes that are coming in there, right? And it sometimes can feel a little transactional. But what I love about being at Dunn is that we have the time, we have the built-in program, that, you know, it makes it fun for me. And I hope that families are able to feel that we, you know, we have that support available regardless of the path. Like, I love my performing arts students. I think that's a really, I mean, that's a really, really fun process to go through. I've had different students, you know, talk about the challenge of that. I mean, it is one of the most, you know, selective processes. If you're looking at, you know, some of those theater programs and musical theater, it's more challenging than many, you know. But I think it's the experience that, you know, that I've been through this before with other families and being able to provide, I hope, good resources for you all. But everyone's path is unique, and it has a different timeline in many ways. Yeah. But the early process now is sort of, it does drive, you know, where we are. And I think getting students into this space early so they understand what's coming, and knowing that we have class together and program to support them, hopefully is helpful.
Great.
Terri, it's invaluable, your guidance that you have for us, because I mean, I just did that with my first child, and as great of an experience was, it was also ended up being so unexpected what the outcome is. So it's hard to know, you know, what the next one's going to be like. It just like two children, completely different needs, different personalities. So I just really appreciate, again, having you at the helm, guiding us and hand holding the parents along the way.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I don't know that we kind of slid in there that we say at a lot of these presentations is exactly what you just hit on. I think, Roxanne, this idea that, you know, as parents, when we have little kids, right, and we're trying to figure out what the heck we're doing, you know, with a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old, we always talk to parents who have like 8-year-olds and they've been through it, and they can look back and give you advice. However, somehow when we get to that high school age, we like to talk to each other too much about things we don't know that much about, and it just stresses everybody out. And so what Brennan and I will often say, and what we hope for you guys, is like, talk to people like yourself, like talk to people who are a chapter ahead of you, who have college kids, or, I mean, and when both of you guys have already said this, and it's just so important. And then certainly like parents of recent college grads, same thing, because they say they never would have expected how this would have played out, or this wasn't even on their list when they were a junior, but it did work out well, or this major kind of came out of nowhere, but now there's an internship and we're excited about it. So that helps everybody just sort of breathe and believe and understand, like, okay, we're not going to necessarily be able to control that. And even the controlling to a certain outcome may not be the outcome that is, you know, the long-standing outcome. So that perspective, I think, and that's why Terri, again, being in the school, I mean, decades of seeing this cycle repeat itself over and over, and all kinds of stories exactly to that point.
That's the wisdom that comes with age, right? Is that I think for the three of us, we've been through this so many times, and we've watched these incredible things happen, you know, and what was sort of came out of the blue ended up being like such a wonderful experience for a young person. And so we know that it works. And I think the hardest part going into this as a parent who's been going through this the first time is that you don't have, like, I would love to be able to just, let people know what's in my brain and go, this is what happens. And it's going to work really, really nicely for your sons and daughters. So, yeah. So I wish I had the ability to do that, but again, when you're old, you have all this knowledge.
Well, it's been a pleasure tonight, and thanks so much for having us. Really enjoyed it, and hope that you're in good hands, and we hope you have a great year.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys so much. I'm sure that this has been just a really helpful thing for our families, and I'm really, really grateful for you all for being here. I see a lot of lovely thoughts in the chat here too. So, and I know it's late there on the East Coast, so it's time for you. I'm sure it's an early work day morning. So
I may or may not already have my pajamas on.
Fair.
The beauty of doing things virtually, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
It was awesome.
Well, thank you.
All right,
Thanks,
friends.
Terri. Good to
All
see
right.
you.
Good to see you guys.
Thank
Thanks so
you.
much.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.